photographers. You got a camera, you got a light, you got some action, you got something to photograph. You've studied all the manuals, you've learned all the lessons, you've done all the YouTube stuff, and still you can't quite put your finger on why your pictures aren't quite woo. So I'm talking about everything from portraits to landscapes to skyscapes. You've studied everything. You're doing all the things. You've learned all the lessons. You're not making any mistakes. You're following the rules of composition. You're following the formal element. But everything just still looks a bit dull and meh. I'm going to explain to you today why learning the rules is important, but what's more important than that is that you break them. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the Lance Burkitt Encounter. For those of you that follow me religiously, those two of you, I've been away for a few weeks because I've been quite ill again with the back issue. Finally, I'm starting to get some pain relief, which is good. I know exactly what the issue is. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to fix it. So for me, it's going to be a case of suck up the medication and hope that at some point in life I find a miracle cure. But I don't want to get too deep into that. That's just why I've not posted any content for a couple of weeks. So it's good to be back. I'm feeling quite a bit better. Today I wanted to talk to you about my journey through composition. And composition, when you hear that word as a student photographer or a new photographer, you think, oh, composition. That sounds a bit like, what old men might used to do. Ansel Adams staring in a field or whatever. Your granddad used to talk about composition. And it's one of those things, composition, that clearly without it, you don't get a picture, because everything has got composition in it, whether you mean to do it or whether you don't mean to do it. But there are some fundamentals that a lot of, even some pro photographers I see, never quite understand what it is they're doing and why, or how they've done it and why. So today I want to go through kind of taking you back to basics and taking you through pretty much my journey, but anybody's journey into understanding why a photograph works or doesn't work. Introduce you to a few concepts you might not have know about. I mean, I don't want to assume everybody's a genius. Unless you studied at art school or on an art course, you're unlikely to have come across things like the formal elements, which we can go through. But fundamentally, you have to know exactly what you're doing to enable you to do it before you can see past that. And a lot of what happens in photography is there's so many rules. If you're being a photography purist, for example, so you've got to have the exposure's got to be correct. So the exposure is the amount of light and dark across your whole image. Is it too bright, too dark? Is it somewhere in between? What's your exposure? Is it correct? And then you've got to think about the other bits and bobs. Is it in focus, out of focus, selective focus? Before you've even thought really about composition. And quite often composition happens naturally. You just put your camera up to how you take it. Sometimes they're the best compositions to make. But what I noticed from more digital photographers, and photographers have come to photography, perhaps even after using one of these god awful things for a while to frame things up, they miss a lot of the intricacies about composition. And really, the composition's not just about where you've put something in a frame or where you've put the tree in the frame. There's a lot more into it than that. So I'm going to talk to you kind of quite quickly because, 2 episodes for this bit about composition, about 50 minutes, maybe 55 minutes talking about it. It's not a lot when you consider I've taught it for 20 years and, an hour will probably just be an introduction normally. So I'm going to spin through it quite quick and show you some of my work from over the years. I'm going to talk to you about things like correct processes or correct ways of composing. But then I'm going to talk to you about what actually goes past that, and hopefully in part 2 you'll get to a point where you can go, fucking hell, I never even thought about that. So we'll start with the basics, and as always I always use my own work because I didn't mean to do that, because I think it's only fair when I'm going through processes that I'm not using other people's images to either deride them or to make them look not as good as me, because it's not really about that for me. It's just about showing you the right stuff. And at least if I'm showing you stuff that I've done, then I can comment on why I did it, how I did it, what the thinking was. Because there's a lot, as well as as well as the technical aspects of composition, you're also telling a narrative. There's always a narrative in every photograph, or there should be. Whether the narrative is just look at this pretty face, or look at those great eyes, or look at that amazing tree on the hill, or look at the sky, then there should always be a narrative in there. And you should be thinking about that as you're placing your subject or framing your shot. But all the other bits of that come into it as you go along. And it's not quite... It's easy to take pictures. It's not easy to then look back and go, oh, shit, I missed that. Or I never even saw that. So I'm going to try and find something of mine from... that's not that recent, so I can try and, get the old brain power going again. And see what I was thinking at the time. I mean, now normally I'm prepared for this kind of stuff. I've got a lot of pictures ready, but for this episode I didn't, because what excuse can I come up with? I don't have one. I don't have an excuse for not having anything ready for you. I just don't, because I've been busy sleeping mostly. So let me just have a look on here. I'll cut this bit out and come back to you. So I'm going to take you back to a couple of years ago when I photographed this lovely lady, whose name escapes me, but I will put it in there. And we were walking around my local town, Rotherham, and the idea was just to do some casual stuff around town, like girl in early 20s, mooching around town, doing a bit of shopping. Nothing too kind of like, and our town centre, Rotherham, is grim. I mean, Rotherham's grim for many reasons. You've only got to put Rotherham into a search engine and you'll find how grim Rotherham is. But the town centre's been purposely, like many town centres have, been purposely destroyed over the last 30 years. To the point now where, it's a great place for a holiday if you're not from Rotherham, if you hear what I'm saying. And it looks like that. A lot of the good stuff's boarded up, all the big shops have gone. There's one or two pubs left. It's a bit like that. So everything was kind of boarded up now. In the town centre, there's an old part of college which we call the Howard Building, which is an Art Deco 1930s building, which has been shut down as long as I can remember, definitely since the late 80s, I think. I mean, I worked at Rotherham College for quite a few years, and it was never open in the time I was there lecturing. So we came up against it. I'm just going to find the picture again now, because I bloody lost it talking to you. Where's it gone? Here it is. So you can see we've got lovely Art Deco building behind, and it's a lovely building. I mean, it's run down. It's been set on fire a few times. All the windows are smashed. It's got graffiti on it. But I love those 1920s, 30s light bulb decor. And I just think that's still there, not being smashed or robbed, I don't know, but I just think it looks great. And I kind of thought on this occasion, I'm going to have to find the model's name because it's going to just annoy the fuck out of me. Let me just find the name. I'm really sorry, I'm fucking terrible. She's a lovely lady as well. We had a great, fun couple of hours just cruising around town. This photographer came up to us, actually, one of those photographers, telling us how good he was, and he had the camera around his neck and all that usual semi-pro photography stuff going on. So this lady's called Eleanor Bailey. So me and Eleanor were walking around town, and we saw this beautiful kind of light bulb, if you like, and she just put a casual off to the shops kind of outfit on. There's no makeup, no styling, none of that stuff going. I just literally said, turn up how you would dress to go shopping. We'll do that set first. So that's what Eleanor did. And we're looking at this Art Deco building. And I'm trying to think, we're not doing formal portraits. We're not doing, I guess you could call it editorial a little bit. But I wasn't doing this to sell it to a magazine. There was no kind of like real mood board involved. It was just trying to get some casual, natural pictures to kind of link in with the things I might talk about. And so we looked at this building for a little bit, and it wasn't, even though it looks great, when you stand somebody against it, it's a bit grotty and a bit. So we just happened to be walking past some steps to the left, and we just walked past, and I saw this bulb, and I just thought, well, it could be quite nice. If you pensively lean on the wall, like you consider, like you're thinking about something, just relax there, a bit like maybe you're waiting for somebody who's fed up in the light bulb moment above you. So that's why and the light bulbs there. But some things are just too raw for the podcast, too honest for YouTube, and too controversial for Spotify. That's why I started the Lock-In. The Lock-In is my weekly email where all the filters are completely taken off. Every week I share my ideas, my brain farts, my thoughts on photography, education and reality. No algorithms, no polish, just the truth straight to your inbox. If you like the Lance Burkitt encounter, you're going to love the Lock-In. Let's get into it. But in terms of composition, when you talk about the formal elements, which is something I said some of you might not have heard of if you're new to the art world of photography, or it might be something that you've heard and never used. I've heard that phrase, but I don't know what it is. Well, the formal elements in art are basically a set of rules which artists will tell you, art historians will tell you that initiated or came from art, not photography, because photography is not an art, remember. And it was kind of like incorporated into photography over the years. But it's a visual thing. And but photography is visual, so we use them in that. So if you just go online, any search engine, to search something like the formal elements in art, you'll see some stuff. And you can get a list of formal elements. Just off the top of my head, you've got things like line, texture, space, the golden ratio, all those kinds of things, and you'll come and you'll see them. And when you see them, you think, "Oh yeah, I've seen that. I have seen that that golden ratio before. I have heard of that." And I'm just going to bring up this quickly because again, I didn't prepare for this. So lines are an easy one when you're looking at a photograph. Bear in mind, I'm not trying to do anything too intricate here. We're not doing a portrait to get this young lady a contract or an agent. It's just a fun photo shoot. But all the same, you want it to look respectable and, like you've thought about it a little bit. So if you look for lines on that picture, the bloody lines everywhere. But where do the lines go? What do they do? Well, you can see there's one here going left to right into a head and one here going from right to left, the top of that wall into a head. So both of those lines lead you to a face. It's not an accident. That's kind of why she's there, right? Now, you're lucky sometimes when you get these things, they just happen. You can get them by happen chance. But on this day, if she'd have stood up straight, you can tell she's kind of like slouching back. It would have missed that marker. And you'll notice once you start seeing these things that your eyes will pick up on natural formations or things that happen like this. And you'll start to realise why you might compose things like you do. So you've got leading lines. So they can be leading in, leading out, leading up, down, across and away. But they're all in this picture, directly pointing at the model, pointing at her and down at her. And they're also, if you look at the walls and the building, they're pointing away from her. So you're looking up, you lead into it, and then you look up and away from her. Now, when you're photographing a person, you obviously want people to look at the person, don't you? You don't want them to be looking at the Ford Capri or the Ferrari that's behind. You want to look at the person. Like, I didn't really want people going, "Oh, that's a nice 1920s electricity bulb. Yeah, I wonder if it still works." It's a great piece of work and art, but not really wanting people to look at that firstly. That's a secondary element. So if we just go back to the formal elements in art again, and you'll see one called shape. There's shape in there, which can be quite ambiguous. Form, which is quite clearly the size, shape, depth, and constituent, that word, of objects. Colour, obviously. Mood, I don't really care for that one because mood you can falsify. Texture can be the texture of the bricks, texture of the cardigan, texture of the skin. That's all kind of there. Value, I don't rate that one at all either. The golden spiral's not on here, so we're just going to search for that so I can show you one. And this is probably the one you will have come across more than any, because it's the one that generally people do talk about as well. So the golden ratio, or the golden spiral, or the golden whatever you want to call it, you can see, if you look at that, if you place somebody in the curl, right at the end of the trail, you follow it round and put them right at the end of the trail, there should be something of interest there. There should always be something of interest there. And if you there's a loose one in this picture. If you follow it from the bottom right and up around that rail, right, and follow it round. And if you kind of would go there, so we're not talking an exact science here, but it's in there. Yeah? Do you get that? Up, around the corner, in there. So aesthetically, I suppose I've hit 3 or 4 markers in terms of formal elements. But what you don't want to do is try and hit everyone, because quite often in trying to hit markers, you miss the moment, you miss the actual picture, particularly if you're photographing things that only happen rarely, like somebody's expression, motor car, dog doing something daft. If you're that busy composing, you'll miss, and we'll talk about that in part 2. But for this shot, I said, just lean there, lean back, tilt your head a bit, just look a bit pensive, like you're fed up of waiting, and you're thinking, light bulb above you for the eureka moment, drawn in by the formal elements which are there. And then there's a lot of space as well, if you like, because the model's only occupying just roughly half of the shot. So, I mean, I could have, for all intents and purposes, I could have cut Eleanor off. Something fell off. I could have cut Eleanor off. And if we just do a quick cropper, we do a Roy cropper on her, and we just cut her down. I mean, that's how you would frame a proper portrait, isn't it? You know, like so. But from a compositional standpoint, that's probably, some people would say that's the right picture. You know, particularly if it's editorial. You can tell she's against the building. You can tell she's looking pensively. We've still got some leading lines. I would probably scrub out that drain pipe in the background. But for all intents and purposes, that's the correct edit. But when you open it up to what I took, it's got a much more contextualised finish. Eleanor still looks great. She's clearly on an Art Deco building. It's clearly on a sunny day because the sky's blue. And there's a great load of depth of field because she's in focus, the bulb's in focus, but the building is completely thrown out. So I've considered f-stop there, and when you're battling with the elements, the sun, the blue sky, the brightness, sometimes you have to go to f-stop you don't want to go. Other times you can get away with what you really wanted to do in the first instance. But like I always say on these podcast episodes, it's a, what's the phrase? There's always a balance. There's always a compromise. So to get away from the sun, I've shot at f5.6 here today, which is unusual when I'm photographing people. I would normally keep it to f11 range. But it must have just been, trying to think back now, shady enough. I mean, if we look at her, there's not a lot of direct sunlight coming on her, is there? It's kind of a bit coming up here and a little bit on the rim. So 200 at 5.6, and I mean everything at 5.6. The face is just in focus. The lamp, the bottom of the lamp's in focus. That corner, which is important, but the rest of it's thrown out. So thinking on my feet, I guess. Bing, bing, bing. Shot done. And quite often in that compromise, you're not thinking, oh shit, I can't get F11, so I'll move on. You get the shot. And I've talked about this before in the episode where I talk about not waiting, just grab the shot. And potentially that's what I did here, because like I said, when we were doing this, a guy came chewing my ear off, a proper photographer, rattling at me, and I was kind of trying to get away, probably. So that was the composition thoughts there. So I have in mind the formal elements. I have in mind that I'm photographing a female who's got a great face and I want to photograph and make her look great. But I'm also thinking I've got a great building here. How can I incorporate it without losing her, without having too much building? And I think I found a nice compromise here. And it actually, I think, makes the photograph much, much more interesting than just Eleanor leaning against the wall, like I showed you on the crop. And again, if I did some test shots. I don't even know if I got the folders here, to be honest with you. I probably haven't. I might have got another edit, a wider edit. Let's have a look. So you can see on the wider edit where Eleanor still looks great, but I don't think it has the same, does it? Edited it to see what it looked like, but never published it. So, and you can see why, because when you look at that, it's got a bit more depth, a bit more clarity, a little bit more contrast in there. And I think it works better mainly because I was aware of the rules, but I pushed through them. And that's something we'll talk about more in part 2. So we'll just have a look at another another one of Eleanor. And again, composition. For this one, we were just walking between buildings and we happened to walk up this passageway and I saw some great light. And again, it's not a Pulitzer Prize winning shot, it's just an interesting shot. And because there was light blasting at Helena from the buildings in the passageway, I just noticed as I walked across the passageway to see what was good, the massive shadow coming off her. So that's why we stopped, to get the shadow. So, but again, from a composition perspective, we've got lines leading you in. We've got lines leading you down the road, from the wall, from the floor. We've got a bit of a golden ratio going on here, up across that, and curling around into a face. We've got loads of texture. We've got a little bit of space because I'm across the way, and the depth of field is causing a little bit of distance between us. It's not a beauty portrait, it's not a fashion shot, it's just a casual shot of a girl leaning on a wall, waiting, whatever it is she's waiting for. And I find when I'm working with light and shadow and I'm trying to show that, quite often you're not really focused on what the model's doing in terms of facial expression or beauty as such. You're just saying to her, just try and be quite normal. Look at as if you just spotted me. We didn't tidy a cardigan up. We didn't get her to pose in a different way. There was probably I took one or two shots. Pretty shallow depth of field again to cause this kind of chaos, bit of a circle of confusion. And I just thought it was a really nice shot mainly because, I mean, Ellen looks great, but because of the shadow, you know, that like V-shaped shadow. I mean, from a composition perspective, she's got a triangle going on there, you know, nice little triangle shape, which again is a natural thing that happened. I didn't plan that, it just is there. But again, if I would have been doing it as a proper portrait or a proper picture, that's what people would have expected, which I think is just a bit pants. Yeah. So if you look at that and then look at the uncropped version, I think it's much more interesting. And from a composition perspective, I've put Eleanor to the right, which gives a lot of negative space here. So an example, if it was a poster for an album or something, you can work with it because person's there, still a great shot. Got lots of space to work in. You know, you can even crop it as an album cover. Well, what are they these days? Do they still do square? Do they still do square album covers? You know what I mean? And you've still got space. So thinking about composition from learning all the rules, learning the golden ratio, the golden triangle, line form, texture, taste, space, and I don't mean outer space, I mean space as in distance. And you can get yourself wrapped up in all that. Oh, God. I've not got her in the rule of thirds. I mean, that's one of the most, probably the most used one, or the most talked about one in photography, because particularly landscape photographers and such, you know, make boring pictures because of it, I think. But you can see I've got some examples here. The rule of thirds is a great place to start. It's a great place to kind of know where you're at. It gives you opportunity to look at the other formal elements, line, texture, space, leading lines, all that kind of stuff. But then if you want to make real interesting pictures, if you want to make something that makes people stop and think about it a little bit, that's the time to get all of the formal elements, all of the stuff you've learned about taking pictures properly, all of the rules that you've been learning over the God knows how many months, years, looking at all that, screwing it up into a big ball, launching it into the bin and saying, right, I've got all that. How can I take that to brilliance? How can I get past that initial understanding of what I should be doing to now, this is what I'm going to do? And we'll talk about that in part 2. See you in a bit. Thanks for tuning into the Lance Burkitt Encounter today. I really do appreciate you spending some time with me here in the world of photography, education and reality. If you enjoyed the episode and feel like you learned a bit of something, do me a favour, like, subscribe and share the channel with somebody you feel really needs to hear it. And if you're able to, and if you'd like to, please head over to lanceburkitt.com/shop and treat yourself to some of the Lance Burkitt Encounter merchandise. After all, that's how we're going to keep the channel and the podcast alive and completely independent. Until next time, keep shooting with purpose and stay true to yourselves. Cheers.
You won't believe, yeah. I can't get you out my life.